I think the main thing that wealthy families do is plan. They treat their wealth like a business, not like money they have in a bank account or a stock account or anything like that. They really plan it out. So that's number one. Then number two is the strategy around it.
Welcome back to the Rabasha Family Podcast. I have a very, very special guest in the building. I have Shuvam here, the head of family office and capital markets, strategic wealth architect for high net worth families, private equity and real estate. One thing that he loves is tax optimization, passive income planning. Now, Shuvam is a visionary. With his imagination, he was able to create a passion to be able to serve. Service is the heart of everything that he does, leading a multi-family office advisory firm with a singular mission, like I said, to serve and help high net worth individuals and families turn complex into clarity and capital into generational wealth. His clients are business owners, executive entrepreneurs who want more than just off-the-shelf strategies. They want access, precision, results, and he delivers all through curated private equity and credit opportunities, tax advantage structures, and customized wealth roadmaps. From rolling over 4Ks into SDIRAs to structuring cash flow portfolios that generate over 200K in passive income. And so really helping those clients pay zero taxes. Every strategy is bespoke, and legally, by the way, every strategy is bespoke. Every dollar has a job and every plan is built to scale. So his specialties lie in so many different topics and areas, however, private equity, private credit venture, tax optimization, trust planning, investment structuring, passive income roadmaps, investment policy statements, and family office strategy. Really building something that lasts. And when I met Shuvam, that was the topic around family office and how families build wealth. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this discussion with you.
No worries. So, such a powerful introduction into who you are and what you've been able to do throughout your whole life. Can you talk to us a little bit, or maybe take us how this journey started?
Marketing is all about storytelling. Dad, when we first started this business, what did you say to me?
I said, yes, we do a podcast.
Why?
Because I want to tell our story.
Why?
Because I know the story builds a legacy.
Builds a legacy. And that is exactly what we do here at ETS Rabasha Media. We market your story on social media so you could build a legacy for those who come after you, to build your business and your personal brand.
Yeah, follow us on our platform. Go on our website, etsrabashamedia.com.
This is about legacy, and it is about showing up on social media every single day, because if you don't show up, your competition will.
So real quick, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I got introduced to the private wealth space very early on when I was 19 years old through the world of golf. And it always was very interesting to me. Moved to Boston about 20 or so years ago now. I worked at the traditional wealth management firms, learned a lot there. And then I realized the very, very wealthy families, ultra high net worth individuals, they all lacked one thing, which was access to good private equity deals, right? The traditional wirehouse world, and they've changed a little bit, but the traditional wealth management firms did your normal financial planning, access to private stocks, maybe some IPOs, but they always focused on the public markets, right? Like I always say, I don't need to tell wealthy families to buy Apple stock or Google stock, right? I think they could figure that out themselves. But what they really want was access to good private equity deals, good venture capital deals, and then also tax strategy around their overall financial plan, right? So I started the firm about 13 years ago now, going on year 13 in 2026. And it's been a great journey. And it's been a rewarding journey in the sense that you really can see the difference that you make with some of these families as we're continuing to grow.
Wow. So really, really powerful stuff that you just started off with there. So when you say that you introduce families to private equity and venture capitalist deals, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. So, a lot of families, individuals are looking for, it could be real estate deals. It could be traditional private equity deals in the sense of owning operating businesses, car washes, laundromats, auto dealerships, whatever have you, right? There's so many restaurants. There's so so many private investments that one can make. Majority of the time, these families don't know how to underwrite it. They don't know how to do due diligence on it. So what we act as essentially is the family's or individual's CIO, Chief Investment Officer, right? We do the due diligence. We do all the legwork when it comes to the investments per se. They have the discretion over their funds, right? We don't custody assets and we don't have discretion over their money. But over the years, they've have relied on our and my opinion on a specific investment. So that's really what they're looking for, right? When, there's a lot of multifamily deals here in the US, right? There's a lot of industrial deals that they could look at. But what makes industrial deal A and industrial deal B different, right? So that's what they need, a different set of eyes to look at, non-emotional, because a lot of these investors get emotional about investments as well. And one of the things I say to all of our families is my job is to save them from them, right? Because when you get to a certain level of net worth, you think throwing a little bit of money here, throwing a little bit of money there, you're never going to lose. But eventually, right, if you have 5, 6, 7 losses in investments, it starts catching up to you, right? So I try to create an investment policy statement for the families, right? That's the first step. Create an investment policy statement, which sets the foundation for the families, right? And within the investment policy statement, it talks about their, obviously, investments. It talks about their wealth. It talks about their legacy planning, their family, what they want to do with their wealth. Do they want to be philanthropic, and all of those things? Taxes, insurance, protection, estate planning. We lay all that stuff out in the investment policy statement. It's a working document, so it's always going to be changing from time to time, but that's the foundation. Think of a house. When you build a house, right, you're not starting at the master bedroom, right? You're starting at the foundation. It's the same thing on the financial house, right? You have to lay the foundation down, and then from there, we start building. I don't want to be the no fun guy to our families, right? Acting as their CIO. So if a family comes to me and says, hey, I like this investment, I know it's risky, but I want to put X number of dollars into it, I'll look at the investment policy statement and see what that meets in their criteria. And if we're allocated enough to do that, then we'll do that, right? But I really act as a steadfast way when I create these portfolios and the overall family office for these families that they don't really start deviating from that.
So my question, well, it's probably a two-part question. How much money does a family need to create a family office is my first question. And then the second question, to someone like you, as I like the way you put it, a chief investment officer, what do you look for that you can see is a good investment? What are the green flags that you would say to when you're working with a family to say, guys, I like this and I think it's going in a good direction for your RO?
Yeah. So first part of your question, what's the level of net worth? I would say it depends. We can create something called a virtual family office model where your net worth can be as low as 5 million. I would say it starts making sense. Realistically, 10 million and above on the virtual family office side, where you're just looking for certain bells and whistles within a traditional family office structure. I think a true family office, when you start getting to $100 million net worth and above, that's when you can start internalizing a lot of things. It's expensive to create your own family office, right? So to hire those types of professionals in-house, you can start looking at, payroll of over $1 million. So the model that we created is more a done for you virtual model, right? Where even if you have a significant net worth, you can plug and play within our advisory system and get all the bells and whistles of a traditional family office, right? We have a tax strategist, we have an insurance strategist, we have an estate planning strategist. If you have a liquid portfolio, we have a traditional RIA that we partner with that could handle that stuff. So we do all the stuff that a traditional family office does, but to the end client, it's much cost effective and they don't have to manage personnel, right? So I would say at $100 million, it starts making sense if you want to internalize it.
So internalize it is more like for example, we hire a CEO of the
Correct.
family office, for example, then, like what you guys do, it's like more, we're not having a huge budget for all of that, but we can still get that same level of kind of service and attention to detail in regards to, our family
That's right.
office.
That's right. Yeah. I would say my estimation, having done this for a long time, $100 million net worth and above. But I've seen families do that with less, right? So, I would say 100 million is probably the average point, but I've seen families who have a 60, $70 million net worth, start that process as well.
So then what do you look at that looks like a good investment? What do you
Yeah.
see and the advice that you give for like, doing that due diligence?
Yeah, good question. So I think post COVID, the markets have changed a lot, right? So if we focus on the real estate sector, but this is also a very broad comment, we look at operators first, right? So you're always betting on jockeys, not necessarily horses, right? We haven't always gotten it right? We bet on jockeys that turned out to be not the best, and we've lost capital for our clients and things like that. It's never fun, but you're not going to bat 1,000 in the investment game. But traditionally, you try to bet with good operators, right? So track record that they have, the location, right? The sector that they're in. Do they have experience doing it? How long have they been doing it? What is their pipeline of assets or potential investments in the future, where you could actually partner with them for not only this specific investment, but 3, 5, 10 years down the line, right? So you want to see that. And then also personality. That's also a big thing. Families do not want to work with people that they don't get along with, right? They don't need that headache anymore, that stress. So you want to, make sure that the management team of the investment that you're doing, the operations and the management team there, they kind of align with your values and your personality and all of that. So I don't want to say it's a lot that goes into it, but yes, those are the key factors. Then we get to the deal specific, right? Then there's the due diligence at the deal. So, we stress test the underwriting that the operator gives us, right? So that's number one. And then once we're comfortable there, right, we have many factors of due diligence that goes back and forth until I'm eventually ready to bring that to a family, right? To say, hey, this is where we are. This is why I like it. I create something called an investor memo, right? Very concise, 1 or 2 page memo for the clients. Say, this is why I like the deal. Here's the team. Here's the sector, location, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what they're looking for from a capitalization standpoint. This is the pros. These are the cons, right? I create something called red light, green light, and yellow light, right? So here's the green lights of the investment. Here are some red lights that we have to look out for. And here is the medium case yellow light situation.
So, like when you talk about your clients, I noticed like there's a lot of entrepreneurs in there. So, let's say even within the family, or a lot of these families, have they all started from creating businesses? Are they all, business owners? And what are usually kind of their revenue marks? And how do you even find these people?
Yeah, so our families, as I think of them, they're from all different walks of life of how they've made their money. So the majority of them, either started a business or entrepreneur, had liquidity event and things like that. But majority started their own business. Some are executives at Fortune 100 companies, and or tech executives that are going to have liquidity events. It's kind of in the business world for the most part, right? How do we find them? Or how do they find us, I should say? It kind of goes both ways. A lot of it today is word of mouth, right? So our existing clients are really good through a referrals, right? Which is really nice for us. So that's the biggest compliment that we could get from our existing clients. But when I first started, it was just hustle, right? I went to some conferences. I'm fortunate enough, I get to play golf a lot. And through the world of golf, I got to meet some incredible people that have opened doors for me as well, which was really, really nice. So that's how it originally started. And then from there, once you create a service model that really works and resonates with people, they're going to want to tell their colleagues and friends and family about us. And that's how we've grown from what started as a single family office to now, a multi-family office with over 30 families.
Wow. And so like, that's quite powerful. When we talk a lot about this and your expertise within the tax optimization, can you talk a little bit about that? How does that work? Like, how does that whole system work? I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, so every family or individual is different when it comes to tax strategies, right? But the one thing is resoundingly clear that a lot of these families, you don't even have to have a significant net worth. a lot of people, their CPA is just doing the basics, which is tax preparation, right? And when you get to a significant net worth, you don't need someone to do your taxes. That's table stakes. You need someone to actually do tax strategy for you, right? The analogy that I use to that is you don't get car insurance after you get into a car accident, okay? Tax planning starts before you get to a certain level of net worth, right? It may not be as complex for a family who has a $5 million net worth compared to a family who has a $200 million net worth, right? I think that states the obvious. But with that said, they could still do tax strategy and tax planning. And that is an ongoing process. It's not, hey, come December, I get all my documents together and I send it to my CPA, and then we meet in March and we file taxes and the CPA says X, Y, and Z, and then that's it. That's not tax strategy or tax planning, right? I'm talking about, okay, if we create a certain structure or a certain entity, how does that then parlay into what types of investments do we do, right? When you get to a significant net worth, the other thing that you're always worried about is creditor protection, right? Against either lawsuits or other types of activities of or people coming after you, right? Lawsuits, or God forbid you get into a car accident or anything like that, right? So we take a protection angle from that, but we plan for all of that in the beginning, right? So real life situation, we had a family that went through that, and they have a lot of employees. One of their employees got into a car accident and injured the other family, and a lawsuit happened. But our family wasn't worried because they were protected, right? Now it's still stressful, but from a financial perspective, they didn't have to worry as much, right? So a long-winded answer to your question, the tax strategy is an ongoing process, right? We work with a firm that's based out of New York that is incredible at tax strategies. We partnered with them now for a few years, and it's been great for our families. And like I said, it's an ongoing sessions with them.
You just brought up that little instance. How are they protected?
So many different ways, but the high level ways is a lot of their assets were in trusts, right? So being in trusts, 99.9% of the time, you're going to be creditor protected, right? In that specific instance. Now, obviously, when we created the trust for them, it was an estate planning tool, right? But one of the byproducts of this estate planning tool is that you do protect yourself, right? And all of that. There's also a condition of anonymity that comes with, trusts and things like that as well, which, the wealthier you get, you don't want to be on Instagram and TikTok and showing off your wealth, right? You want to be under the radar. So that'll, a lot of these vehicles create some anonymity. A lot of, generic LLCs and things like that. Yeah, there is some level of limited liability, but you're not as protected as you are with traditional and more complex estate planning and tax strategy planning as we do.
And for the person who's watching this, what does estate planning mean?
So very high level of estate planning is it's financial planning supercharged a little bit, right? I guess the simplest way is when you and I pass to the government, it's something called our estate, okay? And if you don't have a proper estate planning done right, if you're married, or if you have a significant other, or if you have heirs or beneficiaries, right, within your will, and if you don't have proper estate planning, it actually goes to the government. And then from there, it's something called probate, right? And then from there, your heirs, beneficiaries have to go through probate to say, okay, well, Shuvam within his will said I was supposed to get X, right? Or Y, and things like that. If you don't have proper estate planning, you go through the legal system. If you do have proper estate planning, right, it kind of spells it out. So there's your wills, there's your trusts, there's living wills that you can create. I think everyone that is listening to this and watching this should create a living will, right? That's the most basic thing that you can do. Life today is very, very unpredictable, as we see every single day we turn on the news, right? So the one thing I did with my wife and I, right, she knows where all my assets are. Because, when significant others pass, it's a very emotional toll. that people never think about. The last thing you're thinking about is the finances. So you want to make sure that your significant other or your family knows where your assets are, how they get in, all that kind of stuff. A living will also spell all that stuff out, that son gets this, daughter gets this, wife or husband gets X, Y, and Z, so on and so forth. But that's your very basic estate planning. Essentially, it's just financial planning multiplied a little bit.
It's very interesting and powerful topics of discussion here. What do you think the ultra high net worth families do very well in regards to preserving wealth? Like, it's not just about giving, money to the next person and then
Yeah.
there's principles, there's philosophies, there's mentalities that are structured. You look at, for example, people may or may not like, but Donald Trump, right? That, that's family legacy that comes from the
Yeah.
father, and it's very,
Yeah.
I think it's even harder when you do come from money because that hunger may not be there. But no, you see someone like Trump has gone and taken it to the next level. And then now I'm
Yeah.
sure his children will continue to, so what do families do well, or what do they do well that people don't see when it comes to preserving wealth and passing it down onto generations to do bigger and better?
Yeah, great question. I think the main thing that wealthy families do is plan, right? They treat their wealth like a business, not like money they have in a bank account or a stock account or anything like that. They really plan it out, right? So that's number one. Then number two is the strategy around it, right? So we talked about taxes. They also do insurance planning, right? Using insurance as an asset class, not only as protection, but also as an asset class, right? I think the one thing you brought up Trump, but other significant wealthy families, they also get access to good advisors, right? And that's kind of why I started the family office, is that, there's very wealthy families that I will never want to work with. And the reason I say that is because they have access to those types of people. The families, as I said, as low as 5 million to 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 million net worth, believe it or not, like they struggle, right, on how to find the right advisor team or structure the right advisor team around them to help them. We created a little niche in that world for us, right? Those are typically the families that we work with. But yeah, they plan well. Their tax strategy that they focus on, estate planning, right? They put that into the forefront. And the biggest thing that they do is communication with their family, right? They talk to their kids about wealth, right? They talk to their kids about legacy planning. They talk to their kids about, this is what we're going to do, right? Like, and we actually kind of level set that out in the investment policy statement, right, on legacy planning and all of that. And, other than philanthropy, its main thing is communication, right? We see it, right? The old adage is by the time it gets to the third generation, the money is kind of lost, right? There's a reason why the Vanderbilts, they're wealthy, but they're not the Rockefellers, right? Because the Rockefellers planned for that. They used insurance as a strategy, right? And self-banked themselves through the insurance world. And every heir got it like a slinky, right? It just kept going and going. As opposed to most wealthy families, I should say some wealthy families don't have those discussions. And then, God forbid, something happens to call it the matriarch or the patriarch or the family, and everyone is in the shit mode, right? And then that's where proper estate planning needs to come in play.
I think some extremely valuable lessons there. Also, just speaking on that, so I was speaking to a family who, they have their own CEO managing the family office. So now you can imagine, the network they're
Yeah.
dealing with. And so I'm having them on the podcast, and she was saying, just in a meeting, she said, my daughter from the age of 2 years old was in all of our meetings. From
Yeah.
all of our meetings, seeing exactly how we're from the age of 2 years old, the daughter is in the meetings. They're taking them to the meetings, taking them with the financial plans and things like that. So exactly what you
Yeah.
just said there. You said something around the insurance. Can you explain to people what do you mean by how, for example, the Rockefellers and things like that, how do they use insurance as an asset class?
Yeah, great. This is something that I'm ever learning on, but over the last few years, I've gotten to a good knowledge base. There's something within the insurance world where through the whole life policy, and then I want to preface this by saying I'm not an insurance advisor, like I'm not licensed or anything like that, but I have used really, really smart insurance advisors who have really taught me about this. But with that said, they usually use whole life policies, right? Where you buy a policy and you get the death benefit, right? That's the main reason why. But those are expensive traditionally. What you can do is limit the death benefit, right? There is a formula that insurance companies use where you could limit the amount of death benefit. And why I say that is because you could buy very cheap term life insurance to make up the back end of that death benefit. But within a whole life policy, you can borrow off of it. So you're essentially creating your own bank. Okay, so if I put in $1 million into a policy, I could borrow on average anywhere from 90 to 95% of that value, of that cash value, right, off that million. Okay, I'm still earning income from the insurance company. Insurance companies pay a dividend, right? So you could still get income. Your borrow rates are going to be much lower than a traditional bank. And then from there, you can invest into real estate and other investments that you're looking at, right? So really the play, what a lot of these families do is they borrow from policies and they go buy real estate, okay? And typically their real estate income or appreciation is going to be more than what they're paying on the loan, right? The loans are typically, today's rates are anywhere from 5.5% to 6.5%, as opposed to if you go to a conventional bank to get a loan like that, you're north of 8-9%, right, on average. And then the real estate is trying to, your hope is generating anywhere from 10, 12, low teens on an annualized basis. But you've created two assets. You have this policy with a death benefit where you're getting income from the insurance company. And then with the money, you're going out and bought real estate or whatever asset class that's also generating income for you and an asset class with the same dollar, right? As opposed to if you just leave it in a bank and then you go and buy the real estate with that cash, you kind of lost it, right? So it was a concept for me over the last few years that I got my head around, and it's a very, very powerful tool, right? And I would say 90% of our families are utilizing this strategy now, right? Where we call it the self-banking system. This is exactly what the Rockefeller families did, right? It's called the Rockefeller banking method, actually. And that's what they did 50, 60, 70 years ago. I don't know the exact dates, right? But, they did it a long time ago, and they self-banked their essentially their family. They just continued to buy real estate and other philanthropic endeavors and everything else that they did within the family.
So the Rockefellers, are they still around until today?
They are, yeah. They're still heirs to that. They still have obviously a very significant net worth. They're still in the investment business. They have real estate. Yeah, they're still a very prominent family. Obviously not media driven, right? You won't see them in the media or anything like that. But yeah, they're still heirs to it that are still very active within their family office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful stuff there. And when we first spoke, we talked about the Ritz-Carlton and what incredible service that they have. Can you talk about that method that you use when it comes to the families and your clients that you're serving?
Yeah. So as the Ritz-Carlton is an incredible model. I would love to be sponsored by them, but they're an incredible company in their service model. And we've tried to mimic that within our family office advisory firm. And, it's not, high level stuff that we do. We just do the details really well, right? As small as handwritten notes for the holidays, right? Even though we act as a CIO/CFO for families, we're more than that, right? A lot of the families that I advise for, they came to my wedding, right? We do little things really well. That's the main thing. And what I mean by that is, another real life example. I had a family, their daughter was interested in coming to Boston for school, okay, from overseas. And obviously that is a very overwhelming task, right? New city, new country. So what I arranged for her was a real estate broker to show her some real estate, right, of where to rent and all that. She was interested in the Harvard, MIT, so the Cambridge area, Cambridge, Massachusetts, a real estate broker. And then also organize a tour around Harvard, MIT, and then a little tour of Boston, get her familiar with all of that stuff. It wasn't that much work, right? But to the family, it was amazing to them, right? It was just a level of service beyond the traditional finance stuff that we do, that we like to focus on, right? And they were extremely happy with us, and they've been with us now for 13 years. And I don't want to say that's the main reason, because we have done well for them as a family office, but that's one of the things that they always bring up, especially the daughter, right? She's obviously older now and part of the family office. She always brings up that experience to us, which is, it makes me feel good that she remembers things like that, right? Other little things, right? If family needs something as small as if they have, like, I don't know, I've gotten calls for flat tires, right? For a family, right? Can you help us? Yeah, I mean, little things like that, right? So it's not like a specifically this and that. It's just we like to be there for the families in every sense of the word. Investments for us come a little bit easier, right? Because I've done this for so long. It's the other ancillary things I think separate us compared to traditional multifamily offices.
Incredibly powerful, the level of service, and for example, that's a clear story, right? The daughter, like, that's their family member, that means so much to them. So even just
Yeah.
for you, it's a small gesture, but for them, that's everything. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on also offshore opportunities, like, for example, investing in real estate, places like Dubai and things like that? Do you, for example, it's an American family or even elsewhere in the world, what are your thoughts on things like that?
Yeah, so we have not done any. And it's not because I'm opposed to it. There's a lot of rules and regulation around that stuff, especially on the tax front. If you're a US based family and you want to invest overseas, there's a lot of tax situations there that I'm just not, and even our tax strategist is not up to speed on. But taking one step back, going back to the investment policy statement, right? If we talk about that in the beginning, then that's something we'll look at, right? Most of the time, those offshore or overseas opportunities will come up if someone is talking to them. And I would say 95% of the time, I say it doesn't fit for our model, right? And we shy away from it. But beyond that, I'm just not up to verse when it comes to the taxes and also the investment countries' rules and regulations of how it works and all of that stuff. Listen, it's a huge world outside of the US, and I know that there's a lot of opportunities out there, but we have a lane that we stay in, and other than a family bringing us opportunities, we're not actively going out and trying to see offshore opportunities.
You've been so passionate, so many years into what you're doing. What's next for you? What does the next 10 years look like for you? What's if I had to talk to Shuvam, we're going into 2026. What did a good 2026 look like, and what does 10 years from now look like?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer that in two parts. Personally, I'm married, we don't have kids, so we'll see what the future holds when it comes to that. But, my wife and my two little puppies are the best, so I hope that we continue our life for the next 10 years with our friends and all of that, right? So I wish everyone that I'm with today is going to be around 10 years from now, right? Healthy and all of that. Professionally, I want to keep growing this firm, right? I was content a few years ago, right? We were at a good scale and I was like, you know what? This is good, right? I don't need to keep growing. But then as COVID hit and I started seeing more referrals starting to come in, it got me more passionate again, right, of growing. I want to really build up alternatives silo, our insurance strategy silo, right, in partnerships with a couple of firms that we have great relationships with, and then our tax strategy silo as well, right? Those are really where I don't want to say low hanging fruit, but I want to bolster those up because the investment side to me, that's not, even though we get really good deals and good access to good operating partners that I think a lot of folks don't get access to, but I don't want that to be the differentiator. I really want everything else that we're doing in this family office services, the tax strategy, the insurance strategy, the protection strategy, the estate planning. You couple that all together, that flows into the investments. That's how I want the silo to work. I don't want it, before it was investments and then we focus on everything else. Now I want it to be ground up again, right? From taxes and all that other stuff that I just mentioned flowing into the investment side.
And then is that also dealing with, more families as well?
Yeah. So that's where I was getting to. Yeah. So, We're roughly at about 34 families today, right? I want to get to 50. Right. My goal is by year end of 2026. That's a lofty goal. And I don't think that's going to happen, but that you have to shoot for something. Right. So I want to say to 50. But, I think overall getting to 55, 60 families is really a good space. Okay. Ideally, you want to work with more higher net worth families, right? Significant net worth families, so you can lower the number of families. But I also don't want to lose the roots of how I built the business, right? Like, helping the $5-10 million net worth families. They're still going to need help, and I know we can do a good job for them. So I don't want to kind of forget about them as we're growing, right? That's how I grew my business, right? So I still want to be able to be there for those types of families. But as we get bigger, it just becomes you become a product of your success that you have to delegate properly. Now, does that mean that we grow internally as far as folks within the family office and things like that? We shall see on that front, right? Managing people is tough, but if I meet the right people, I definitely want to bring them on internally as well. So there's a long-winded answer to your question of what does growth mean, and where do I see myself in 10 years from now? But that's kind of I would say the 3 to 5 year plan. And if I could execute that plan really well, then our 10-year mark will definitely take care of itself. And the 10-year mark is not having more families beyond the 55 or 60. It's really having meaningful relationships with the families that we have, right? Where what I mean by that is that we essentially are their CIO in every aspect of the word. Any big financial decision that a family is going to make, I want them to speak with us first before they make that decision. We have gone to that place with a good group of our families, but as we grow, right, that's where I want to be with everyone. And that 10-year mark is going to show that, where if we have those types of relationships.
Powerful, powerful. Just real quick, can you talk about when you were building the business at the very beginning? First, even from 1 to 5 years, but like, what were some of the most challenging moments? What were some of the most moments where you're just like, man, like, will this work, man? Like,
Yeah.
what were really tough moments for you?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of those. I think the first thing is like when we made an investment and it didn't work out properly, and you lose a client money and you feel absolutely terrible, right? And you ask yourself, what do you do, right? Like, are you gonna be able to grow from that and all of that stuff? But you realize that it's just a part of the ecosystem we're in, right? You're not gonna hit 10 for 10 in investments. It just doesn't work, right? Even the biggest firms in the world don't bat 1,000. So that was something for me that I had to get over, right, myself. Another thing, that was challenging is as I was pitching families about what we were doing, I was getting a lot of no's, right? They weren't interested. I was young. I didn't have a proven track record, right? I needed a family to give me a shot, right? Luckily, a family did, and I'm always grateful for them, and they're very meaningful to me. But that was very hard, right? Is always to get that first family to give you that opportunity, right? And I'll never forget that every no that I get, even today, brings me closer to a yes, right? So I'm still grinding, hustling, meeting people in very unconventional fashions, right? Obviously through referrals, but, I'm still very active in going out to conferences to a degree, or networking events and things like that, telling our story. And hopefully that's compelling enough to some of the people that we're in the room with. Majority of the time, we're getting rejected. And I had to get a very thick skin in this world, which was difficult for me in the beginning, because I just thought, oh yeah, I have it all together, great presentation. But at the end of the day, right, people want to see results first, and then they invest. And then luckily we had some good success, and we've gotten to the place where we are now. But rejection was always hard.
And that's why you are where you are now. There's other people who, may give up when they experience those moments, that, maybe losing clients' money could deter someone going through rejections. Let me just quit and leave. But you kept going, and that's where you are.
Yeah. Well, knock on wood. Yes, that's, I hope that beyond the initial rejection, that we're actually providing a great level of service, right? So we want that to obviously stand out. But yeah, you have to have grit, right? You have to have grit, period. But you have to have grit definitely in the sales world, because you're going to get rejected a lot. But it's just math, right? There's a lot of people in this world, and there's a lot of people with a lot of money in this world. You just have to somehow navigate your way to get in front of them, right? And I owe a lot to the world of golf, right, to help me get into some of those circles. And I'm fortunate enough to play golf at a decent level where it gets me in front of a lot of these families or individuals where I could have a good conversation with them, and gets me across some of those hurdles that, if I didn't know them, would be a challenge, right? So I've been fortunate there.
Yes, awesome. So usually what I like to do is I like to play a game. And so what I like to do is I'll give you one word, and then you will, like, whatever word comes to your mind, you say it. Yeah?
Okay. All right.
Wealth.
Opportunity.
Explain.
So I view wealth differently. It's obviously nice to have a lot of money, right? But the older I get, you realize what's important to you, right? So my dad is not great health-wise today, right? He's got dementia, congestive heart failure. He's 83 years old. My mom is his caretaker, right? I realized I would give up everything I have to have him be healthy again. So what is wealth, right? Steve Jobs had all the money in the world. He couldn't buy one more day, right? So wealth to me creates opportunities for yourself. Now, for some people, that may mean I'm going to buy the nicest car, the biggest house, the nicest watches, right? Materialistic stuff. I don't care. That's their own, right? So I don't judge. To some people, it's what I call the ripple effect. You want to create a legacy, so you become philanthropic. You donate to cancer, you donate to disease research and all of those types of things, to schools, education. My dad, the little wealth that he had, he donated. He's from India. We're from India. He donated a lot of money back to his village in India to create a sports complex for the village, right? Where people could go hang out, education, play games, get them off the streets, essentially, right? That's his legacy forever, right? It's never going to go away. So that's what I mean by opportunities. And, and I'll be the first one to say we grew up middle class in New York. So my dad didn't have like uber wealthy money, but he made us feel wealthy, right? That we never have to worry. And I'm sure there was a lot of sleepless nights for him, right? Where, how am I going to pay for mortgage and have my, provide for his wife and, me and my brother, right? But with all that said, he still did stuff for people back in India that he hasn't seen for a very, very long time. And as I got older, I realized, like, you can't take the materialistic things with you, right? Denzel Washington's famous quote, you don't see a U-Haul behind a hearse. They're not packing the houses and the cars and the watches in your casket, right? All you have with you is your memories, your soul. That's all you have, right? So on your deathbed, you're asking for your loved ones to be by your deathbed. You're not asking for, hey, can you bring me my car, right? I want to see my car one last time. You're asking for, your loved ones around you. That's your wealth, right? So that's what I mean by opportunities.
Wow. I love the way you really broke that down. Very, very true. The next one, precision.
Detail is what I'll say.
Detail.
Yeah.
Explain.
So, you know, precision is direct focus on a task, a goal, whatever it may be, right? Now, a lot of people goal set, okay? This is going to sound very weird. I'm not a big goal setter. I have things I want to accomplish. But to accomplish those goals, you need to do things. You need to focus on details, right? You have to be precision. So if it's in the professional world, right, you have to do tasks every single day, right? You have to be the model of consistency to get to that end goal, right? You have to be, very precise in the things that you do, right? If you, like fitness wise, right? Like January 1st is around the corner. We know what's going to happen at the gyms, right? Come January 2nd, right? But by February 1st, the gyms are going to be back to normal again. Why? Because people are going to be off that precision and the detail and the consistency, right? That's probably another word I would use for precision is consistency, right? So Yeah, detail, I think, is a synonym to the word precision as well as consistency.
Love it. Generational wealth.
Legacy, that's what
Explain.
I would say to that. Yeah, I mean, there are people in this world that are very fortunate that their families or heirs have created something from a financial perspective that they might not have to work, right? You could take two roads with that, right? You could be going out and just FU money and enjoying it with your friends and all that type of stuff. Or you could really create a legacy, right? I brought up my dad, what he did back at his village in India, in West Bengal, right? He created a legacy for himself, right? Anytime people go into that structure, right, it's named after his mom, right? That's one of the caveats that he had when they built it, that it was going to be named after his mom. It's a family legacy. It's always going to be there, right? It's going to have that ripple effect from generations to come. Okay. Legacy, the term can be used in many ways. A lot of people think of it as a philanthropic way, but it could also be internal, right? What do you do with your own kids, right? How do you want them to grow up, right? And I'm not just talking about financially, like from a value system perspective. Are they going to have gratitude? Are they going to be precise? Are they going to be consistent? Are they going to be detailed focused? Who is their friend group? How is that friend group going to affect your family? It's things that people don't think about when you have a lot of wealth. Everyone is looking at you in a different light when you become wealthy. It's the unfortunate truth about wealth, right? People don't like you when you have wealth. The jealousy builds, right? It's sad, but that's the way the world works, right? People look at Jeff Bezos as he's unfair to Amazon workers and all of that. And then there's the other side is where he employs 300,000 plus workers and created an incredible company, right? So there's always two sides to the story. So that's what I mean by legacy, is that you can choose the legacy if you're fortunate enough to, I should say, not only if you just only come from wealth, right? Again, generational wealth necessarily doesn't only mean zeros in a bank account, right? Generational wealth can be, hey, I'm going to create an opportunity for my family. And we always hear about the stories of the kids that grew up in very poverty driven circumstances that end up going to Harvard or MIT and becoming a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Well, they didn't grow up with the opportunities that what one would think from a wealthy family, but they created a legacy for themselves, right? So that's the word that comes to mind. And I always say legacy doesn't always mean financial.
I love it. I love it. I love the way you've broken it down, and the passion in, it's so true. This is what it's all about. And I really think we can end it there. That was amazing. I want to thank you so much, Shuvam. By the way, your name is quite powerful. What does it mean?
Yeah, so it comes from a prayer, a Hindu prayer, Satyam Shivam Sundaram. And well, from what I've been told, it means good luck. So I've been very lucky in my life, so the name has really resonated with me. I have an incredible family, incredible wife, I have incredible friends. I'm fortunate enough from the financial perspective as well, but it's never dawned on me to I'm at the point now where I really want to give back a lot, not only through our family office, but through our charitable work that we do and things like that. So, but yeah, it means good luck.
I love it. And so it's an Indian name, is it?
It's a Hindu name, yeah.
But originally you're from India.
My family's from India, from West Bengal, right? So my mom grew up in Calcutta. My dad grew up in a suburb of a village of Calcutta. But my brother and I, we were born and raised in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. I
So
just
yeah,
love that because like even just when I said your name Shuvam, ever since we spoke, like it just speaks power. The name is everything. Your name is the identity, right? Like,
yeah,
similar to you, like for example, I grew up in Australia, originally from Kenya and Rwanda, but yeah,
yeah,
we've also, just as a side topic, we've been quite heavy on, for example, Africans taking their African name. So when I just saw Shuvam, I was just like, what a name.
yeah,
But you can see it, and that's why you see Indians like all over the world. They're very strong. They have such a wealth background also because yeah, they have their identity, they have their culture, they understand it. No matter how many
right,
generations they're born in America or Australia, they still
yeah,
know. You just told me right there the meaning of your name straight away. and
Yeah.
that's quite powerful. So anyway, that's a whole topic for a different
Yeah,
day.
no, but the one thing I would say about immigrants in general, like I saw my mom and dad how hard they worked, right? Like how hard they worked. And it's true for a lot of immigrants, I'm sure, in the African community, right? There's a lot of hardworking people. Now, that doesn't resonate that you're going to make more money. And that's the one thing I want to tell people is that wealth, no matter what your wealth is, you can make a difference as however small. I think the first thing is you have to be a good parent or a good son or a good daughter. So you have to have a value system, right, within your family. And that's why we go back to the IPS. I would say 50% of document is talking about non-financial things. Values, legacy, foundation, all of those types of items. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough where I had a great foundation growing up.
Love it. Okay, Shuvam, thanks so much. I'm sure we're going to connect with much. This will
Yeah,
be put up on YouTube and Spotify later. It's out on LinkedIn. What did you want to say?
I said I would love that. I would love that. I really enjoyed it, and obviously thank you for all the good work that you guys are all doing. Right? I mean, listen, without these types of mediums, our stories don't get told. So I appreciate you having me on.
No worries, no worries. Like I said, I'm excited for the future and what's to come. And also on a side note, how can people find you?
Yeah, my email is SB, so my initials at sbipfo.com. I'm on social as well, on Instagram. Instagram is more my personal stuff, sbgolf00. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Shuvam Bhaumik, on LinkedIn. I'm very communicative, so you can definitely find me in all those channels.
Cool. All the entrepreneurs, family offices, you guys heard him, from 5 million and up. You're looking for that expertise and have that advisory, you know where to come and find Shuvam. So thanks, guys. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Shuvam, I appreciate you. That was really, really fun. And we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Happy New Year, all.
You too. Happy New Year. Hey, what's wrong? Bro, I'm stressed out. I'm running my business. I've got to serve my customers, but I need more customers coming in. I can't keep relying on word of mouth. Why don't you just use ETS Rabasha Media? Who? Well, with AI now, what they do is they go in, get your perfect clients, bring them in front of you. So all I got to do is run my business and he brings me opportunities. Think about it. You speak to 3,000 of your ideal customers, convert 1% of that 3,000. That's 30 people. 30 people in a room with you. Can you convert that? Of course I'll close them. I'm good at what I do. I just don't have time to be going and looking for my perfect client. Focus on what you love doing and let them bring you customers. When you win, they win, commission, ching. Sujira Rabasha, huh? Yeah, Sujira Rabasha. Go and Google them, man. Come on, take it to the bank.
If you really enjoyed this video, make sure to click here, and I'm sure you're going to love that one.